Hello, everyone. This is Dorie Clark, and we are here with our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. And this week's guest is Ayse Birsel. She's the author of her past book, Design the Life You Love, and she has a new book that is coming out imminently. We were talking with her in the last week before its official release. It is Design the Long Life You Love. Ayse Birsel, welcome. It's great to have you.
Dorie Clark, it's so good to be here. Finally.
I know we scheduled this months ago, so we're really looking forward to it. And welcome to all of you who are tuning in and joining from around the world. Please feel free to type in and let us know who you are and where you are watching from. We'd love to say hello, and we'd also love to take your questions for Ayse Birsel. So, Ayse, the first question: you have made your name with your super creative and amazingly illustrated book, Design the Life You Love. You're venturing into new territory here, but let's start with the basics. What does it mean to design the life you love? How can you actually do that? That sounds like an excellent value proposition. I imagine a lot of people would want to do it, but what does it mean to actually take the steps to craft such a thing?
So, our life is our biggest project. And so designing our life means that we get to design the best project possible. And what I propose is to deconstruct and reconstruct our life. And, our mutual friend, Mark Ryder, renamed it actually. He calls it destruct.
That sounds pretty hardcore.
I love it. Destruct and reconstruct, Ayse, he says. So it's about understanding what our life is made up of, deconstructing it into its pieces so that we can see it and kind of cut the links that we assume are between things and then decide which pieces are important, maybe add new pieces, reconstruct it, and use those ingredients to imagine the life we want.
Well, that's fascinating. And one thing that I think is most interesting about Ayse's work is that the designing element is informed by her background, because she is by profession a designer. She has created everything from products for Herman Miller, for The Office, to automotive products. She's designed for some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies in the world. And her work is held by museums, and she's been named one of the 100 most creative people in business by Fast Company magazine. So she is an expert at design, and now she's applying that in new terrains. And we want to say hello to some of the great friends who are tuning in to join us from around the world. Hi to Wade from Houston. Cynthia's tuning in from Hollywood. Peter's back from Edinburgh. Cheryl is here from Minneapolis, St. Paul. Susan's in Arizona. Greg's in Colorado. Katie is here in Weehawken. Sushma's joining from India. Ruth is in France. Annette is here from SoCal. Enrica's in Switzerland. And Kathy is in St. Louis. We love having every single one of you here. Thanks for being here, and type your questions in for Ayse Birsel. She's the author of the new book, Design the Long Life You Love. So, okay, Ayse, you're a designer. You decide, okay, I'm going to apply this so we can all design great lives for ourselves. Why did you turn the lens onto design the long life you love? How did longevity become your thing?
I'm so glad you asked me. I think this happened a couple years ago when my kids were younger and my parents were aging, and I was kind of sandwiched or squeezed between my parents and my kids. And I saw there's so much for my kids and so little for my parents. And frankly, Dorie, I think I freaked out. And I thought, I'm next, and
aren't we all, Ayse? Aren't we all?
Yeah, really. So I actually looked it up, and apparently 87% of us Americans worry about aging. And so we're not alone. And it's no surprise, because most of our lives are very well structured. And suddenly, like midlife on, there's a lot of uncertainty and unknown about this life that is now longer. And truly, it's undesigned. So I thought, well, I'm a designer, and I've written a book about designing the life you love. Now I want to think about design the long life you love. And so that's what I did. And that's how it started.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. So we're here talking with Ayse Birsel. If you want to learn more about her and her new book, Design the Long Life You Love, you can go to aysebirsel.com. Ayse also has her own weekly event. If this is not enough amazing weekly event for you, Ayse has her own on Wednesdays. So you can now be filling multiple days of the week. It's every Wednesday. She has a virtual tea, and you can learn more about it and sign up for her newsletter at aysebirsel.com/newsletter. We also want to say hi. We have amazing friends joining us. Type into the chat box. Let us know who you are and where you're tuning. Rhonda is from the confusingly named Indiana, Pennsylvania. We have Allison from Toronto. Oliver is in Sao Paulo. Haley's in Dallas. Jose is in Peru. Bobby's in South Dakota. And Paulina's in Cleveland. And Lauren's joining from down the street in Miami. We're very glad to have all of you.
So cool. So
yes.
Cool. And you know, Dorie,
yes.
It's like here people could study the long game, and then they come to then design the long life.
It's almost like we've made a shidduch here. We've just like, you know, our books are getting married. Ayse, I'm very pleased about this. I see Todd, our friend Todd Churches, who's joining, made that comment as well. So this is great. It's sort of like you know, the peanut butter and chocolate mixing together. So I feel very good about this.
Me too.
So Ayse, a question that I have for you here. So you talk about, you know, 4 themes in your book. It's love, purpose, well-being, and friendship. These sound like pretty important ones, but how did you decide on those? And how do we actually begin to think about optimizing all of those pieces? It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, well, life is a big project, right? So these are the 4 pillars of life. And the way we decided on love, purpose, well-being, and friendship was we had a year-long grant to help people across the states design their life, people who are 65 and older. And that research is actually the foundation of my new book. And it's these people who told us, you know, if you want to understand us, think no further than what you want. And what do we all want? We want these 4 things. You know, we want love, purpose, well-being, and friendship. And so that became the backbone of my book. And the things that I learned from these people, older people, wiser people who were, you know, 65 to 90 plus, was that there is no age for designing your life. And now, you know, our lives are longer, 20, 25, 30 years longer. And this is a great moment to think about this gift of life. You know, what do we want to do now that we've been given extra time? You know, how lucky is that?
Yeah, that's an amazing point. That's great. We're here with Ayse Birsel. She's the author of Design the Long Life You Love. And if you're enjoying this conversation, hit the like button, hit the share button so that your friends can benefit from the conversation as well. And a question, Ayse, that came in, I think this is great here. Lauren in Miami, she's an attorney. She says, I know many lawyers that even have quarter life crises now. So intentionally designing your life, you know, even earlier is so helpful. Can you talk a little bit about this? Because I would imagine that the steps that you'd have to take in designing the long life you love may be different if you're 25 versus 45 versus 65. So how do you think about that?
So really what I wanted to do is I learned all these great lessons from older people who've lived the longest, right? And we coined them, Seda Eves, who was part of our design team, named them the astronauts of life, you know, going where no one has gone before. So they have a lot of wisdom about life and so much experience. So really, the book is distilling those lessons that we've learned from older people and saying, these are lessons we can all use. The sooner, the better. So, and it's things like, for example, my favorite is about love. And we often assume when we think about love, you know, it's loving someone else. It's loving a partner or a child or a friend. But the lesson from older people is the most important love. The starting point is to love ourselves. And this happens over time, naturally. but I want to accelerate that. It's like we don't need to wait until we're 60 to love ourselves. We can start to do that 20 years old and on. Or for example, older people, we all know this, they love to help other people, right? And that is actually something that we can all benefit from, because when you help somebody else, and in my world, that's collaboration. Design is all about collaboration. When you help each other, you're actually collaborating. And when you help someone, the person that you help most is yourself. Well, that again is a great thing to know and to start earlier on in life. And so I can go on and on, or you can read the book.
There is always that. And the book is called Design the Long Life You Love. You can order it today. It's released next week. So order it now. You're pre-ordering it, and then it will be in your hands the minute it's available. So we want to say hi to our great friends tuning in from around the world. Oh, look at that. It is a kitty, a handsome kitty. Is that your kitty, Ayse?
This is my kitty, but I'm showing it because I know you have a slight weakness for cats. So, but I just wanted to show that the whole book, because it's a design book, it's all about, visualizing this information. And so there are lessons, but also kind of tools and tricks of the design trade that you can apply to your life.
Well, that's so interesting. So explain that a little bit more. Like, what do you mean by tools and tricks of the design trade, and how does that apply? Because I think some people can imagine, but for other people, they might be like, okay, design's cool, I like nice things, but how does it relate to, the aging process? Like, how do those two pieces connect?
Yeah, well, the way they connect is a very simple one. For example, is design is all about optimism. So one of the tricks of thinking like a designer is to have that optimism that no matter how hard the problem, you're going to come up with a better solution. Or I mentioned collaboration already, to look at everything as a potential for collaboration and not feel like I have to figure this out myself. Or turning challenges into opportunities. Design is a problem-solving discipline. And so most people shy away from problems. We designers, we love problems. If you don't have a problem, you can't design. So you need a problem, and that becomes an opportunity for us. So those are the kinds of things that I talk about in the book that are absolutely applicable to our life. And
yeah,
that's the biggest design project again.
I love it. That makes perfect sense. And we want to say hi to our amazing friends joining us. Thank you all for tuning in. If you're just joining us, let us know who you are and where you're dialing in from. Helen's here from Scotland. Lori's in New York. We've got Elaine from Maplewood, New Jersey. We've got Jennifer here and Robert. We've got Rose joining us. Todd's in New York City. Adnan is your countryman. Ayse from Turkey. Milton's in Sao Paulo. We've got Berna from Connecticut, and Yasmina from France. We love having every single one of you. Thank you all.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Yay! So now a great question, Ayse, came in. We love questions from our audience. And Haley is looking for some advice here. She says, how can I encourage my spouse to spend more time developing friendships? I mean, a lot of research, as you know, has shown that healthy friendships are really important for satisfaction and longevity in life. She says he's so busy building his career and spending time with our family, he often puts other relationships on the back burner. He's in his mid-30s. So what can a person like that do to, when they feel so busy, to set themselves up for long-term success in terms of their relationships? And if you're the spouse of that person, is there anything you can do to kind of nudge them in a polite but loving way? What are your thoughts, Ayse?
Oh, this is such a good question. And first of all, I think there's nothing wrong with dedicating your time to your work and to your family. That's a great endeavor. So first of all, I would say, hey, just pat your spouse on the back and say you're a good person. But then in terms of friendship, I always think of how to bring things together to coexist. So maybe including friends in family events. So you're killing two birds with one stone. And the other would be, my favorite is, because I have a similar problem, and maybe Dorie, you do as well, where you're so invested in your work, you love your work, and then you have your family, and it doesn't leave much time for other things. So what you can do is become friends with people you work with, and then work with your friends. So then again, it's a dichotomy resolution. You bring those two spheres. I can't say that word now that I just found out, of, life and work together.
Yeah, that's a great point. And actually, it dovetails with something that Stuart Friedman from Wharton talks about, where he calls it a four-way win, which is, how, with the different quadrants of life, his sort of four quadrants of work and family and friends and health. How can you get a win on multiple quadrants simultaneously? And he says, well, you need to work out more. Can you do it with your friends? Or,
Exactly.
how can you combine it? So I think that's really great advice.
And
Excellent.
actually, for more,
show us here. Yeah.
Yeah. This is what I call a friendship factory. So
Ayse has the best designs.
It's a good metaphor for, the idea being that we find love, but we make friends. And I was thinking, well, if you can make friends, you can manufacture friends. And where do you do that? You do that in factories. So I set out to figure out, what's a friendship factory? And a friendship factory is actually kind of, Dorie, what you often do is bring people together. And it's about shared spaces of ideas, interests, shared time. And then what accelerates this all, friendship is trust. And when you have mutual friends, that accelerates trust. So it's that kind of like understanding that it's not easy to make friends, but there's a formula for it. Well, now there's.
Now there is. That's
now
right.
there is.
And if you want to learn more about that formula for making friends and also having a happy and successful long life, the book is Design the Long Life You Love. It is by Ayse Birsel. You can learn more about her and sign up for her newsletter and join her weekly virtual teas at aysebirsel.com/newsletter. And if you want to make sure you never miss one of our weekly interview shows where we interview top authors, business thinkers, and more, this is Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. I'm Dorie Clark. You can go to my website, dorieclark.com. You can sign up, get a free self-assessment. You can sign up to download that, and you will be added to the email list so you can get reminders for great conversations like this one. And we have wonderful questions coming in from our folks who are tuning in from around the world. And I love this one. Julio wants to know, where is the beef, Ayse? He says, Design the Life You Love is a beautiful piece of work. I get that we live longer, but what's different? Basically, what is the insight you have now that you didn't have before? What is it that is new between your previous book and this new book? So basically,
that's a great question.
Yeah, for readers of Design the Life You Love, what is it that they can get this time and be very excited is coming down the pike in the new book?
That's an excellent question. So, I didn't think that this was going to be my second book. And a friend of mine actually told me after I wrote the first book, he said, well, you know what would make a great bookend to your first book? You wrote Design the Life You Love. Now you need to write Design the Death You Love, and you'll be done. And I was like, oops. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the morbid version.
I was like, I don't think I can do that. But before we get there, what we do have is this idea of a long life that has not been designed. So most people think of their life, and there's all kinds of support systems for our life early on, whether it's school or work or family. But it's more like when we become empty nesters, or we think about retirement or a second or a third career, that is when we're really, those moments of transition are great moments for designing your long life. And that's where this second book comes into, that's when you need this book. And what's different from the first book was truly pure design process and tools. It was here's your life, here's you, here's a design process, bring them together. This one is different because it's really about all the lessons that we've learned from people living longer, distilling that. And so it now gives you the design process and tools, but also the point of view of people who've lived the longest. And who doesn't want that early on?
Exactly. It sounds helpful to me. We want to say hi to some of the great friends tuning in to join us from around the world. This is Dorie Clark. This is our weekly interview show for Newsweek Better. And we have Chris joining from Lagos. We have Sarah in Iran. Banu is in the Hudson Valley. Lena is in Silicon Valley. Martha's in Ottawa. And Asamanya's in India. We're so glad to have all of you. And Ayse, a great question came in here. I think everybody's been noticing this. We've gotten good comments here about your background. You can tell this woman is a designer. And Cheryl says the rabbit in the background is one of my favorite aspects of Ayse's approach. And it's playfulness. How do we keep something as weighty as life planning fun? So there we go. We get the up close for that handsome rabbit. I love that, Ayse. Thank you. And
Yes.
talk to us, how do this might seem like, oh, what a drag. Oh my God, I've got to figure out my whole life. Maybe it does sound like an eat your spinach kind of assignment, Ayse. If someone is viewing it this way, how do we change it? How do we make it fun?
This is dessert.
Oh, good. Okay, tell us.
Yeah, it's actually, I think I would say this book is the main course. And then this is the dessert. I'm going to beat this metaphor to death. Dorie, you want to be the bread or the peanut butter?
Oh,
or the jam?
I'll take peanut butter. I'm peanut butter every time.
Okay, I'll take the jam. But basically, that's a great point, Cheryl. Thank you. The playfulness. This is something that we designed, the playful rabbit, to bring this point of, especially when it comes to serious projects. And I think our lives are, the most serious thing we can get. That's when we need some levity and playfulness, because when we're playing, we're like kids. We're not afraid of making mistakes, right? So just think of yourself when you were 5 years old. You played with things and you didn't worry about, am I going to fail? So that's the same idea here, is to give you some guidelines so that you can play with ideas and figure out what you want out of life. And then often in design, when you have a good idea, then that's when you get excited and then you make it happen. My goal is to get you to that moment of excitement of like, oh, this is what I want out of my life, not what life wants out of me. It's the opposite, what I want out of my life.
I think that's a really interesting point, Ayse, and it reminds me of something that I wanted to ask you about, which is one of the things that you mentioned in your book is that people start their lives with ready-made purpose, but that as they get older, they define self-made purposes. Can you talk about that distinction and what you mean by it?
Absolutely. So ready-made purpose is purpose that comes from all the things that are given to us and that we take for granted. So this could be, when we're younger, our parents telling us what to do, go to school. I have now 2 kids, one in college, one is about to get into college. And what do I tell my kids? You need to go to university. That's ready-made purpose. Yeah, your mom is telling you. And then you're like, okay, I need to work. And that's also like, work is ready-made purpose. At work, they tell you, here's what you need to do. And even if it's your work, you figured it out inside that structure. But those things over time recede, or they're not enough anymore, where, maybe many of the people here are successful people who have had multiple careers maybe. And especially if you're listening to Dorie, you have side gigs, you have multiple things going on. And then you realize, well, what now? And that's where the self-made purpose kicks in, and where you, again, creatively and playfully figure out what excites me, what matters for me. And especially one of the things that older people told us is they want to do something that they care about and care less about what other people think. And I love that. So care more about what you want to do and care less what other people think. And then just lean into the ambiguity of not knowing.
Yeah, that's a great segue, Ayse. Thank you. We want to say hi to some of our amazing friends joining us from around the world. Again, hit the like and share button if you want to make sure that your other friends, your extended group of friends and family can benefit from this conversation. We've got Mariama joining us from Virginia. Maria is in Maryland. Nayam is in Bangladesh. Gail, otherwise known as Mama, is in North Carolina. And Vani is in the south of France. Our friend Marita Marie is back from Ireland. We love having all of you. And a question from Elaine, who wants to know a little bit more about this whole planning situation. She says, is it okay to sometimes just go with the flow without deliberate action, or do we need to be planning every minute? Like, how do we balance?
Elaine, thank you so much for that question, and Dorie for noticing that question. I had my eye on that as well. It's really... Look, I don't design my life all the time. I only had one couple who are in the book who told me that they design their life together every Sunday, which I thought, wow, that's impressive. But the point is, again, design is a problem-solving endeavor. You use it in moments of, transition. There's a change coming up, or you're tired of something and you're looking for fresh ideas. And we all have these naturally in our life, right? There's a moment of transition, or whether we generate that transition or it happens to us, which, COVID was a great example of that. It's, who wanted COVID? No one. Who had it? We all did. So, and that's when I started these virtual teas to design our lives through COVID, and now post-COVID. And I think there's an incredible openness from people having lived through COVID as a collective experience to think about, what do I want out of my life? And so it's a great moment to use design tools to design your life.
Yeah, that's a really great point. We're here with Ayse Birsel. She's the author of the book, Design the Long Life You Love. If you want to learn more about her and her work, just go to ayshaybirsel.com. And if you'd like to join her newsletter so you can get reminders about things like her virtual teas every Wednesday, go to ayshaybirsel.com/newsletter. Ayse, we have time for perhaps one more question. And I'd love to bring it up from Vani, who says, okay, talk to us about designing the long life you love in these uncertain and competitive times. If, and this is something I can appreciate, Vani, because I talk about it a lot in my book, The Long Game, but Ayse, I'd love to get your perspective on this as well. If we, let's pretend that the long life we love is maybe 30 years out. We don't even know what the world is going to be like then. The singularity may have arrived. We may be cyborgs. So how can we actually plan for that? What does that mean in all this uncertainty?
Such a great question. First of all, I think creativity is what makes us human. So truly, what better time to lean into than that, what better time to lean into our creativity than now, especially in moments of uncertainty. And I often talk about design is imagining the future based on what we know today. And we can all do it. All I'm doing is giving you tools and process to do it. But one thing that I've learned through this experience of teaching people how to design their life and now design their long life is you are all extraordinarily creative. But like me, you need a process, and here's a process. And the process is accessible enough that a child who's 10 years old can do it. And then somebody who's 90 plus can do it, and everybody in between. And it's a great way to approach uncertainty, because that's when we need optimism. That's when we need collaboration. That's when we need to think about our values, which is a big piece of designing your life. Designing a life that's based on your values and that's original to you. So that, and when you know your values, you can decide what you want and you don't want. And so all of these things, and have empathy for yourself and others, all of these things together make this an incredible adventure in my mind, designing your long life.
That's fantastic. Ayse Birsel. She is the author of Design the Long Life You Love. You can learn more about her at ayeshebirsel.com. Sign up for her newsletter, and you can join us every Thursday, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, 5 o'clock in London. That's right. The long game and Design the Long Life You Love. They are, brothers from another mother.
This is the real reason why I wrote my book, everyone.
That's right. That's right. It's so symbiotic. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in. And Ayse Birsel, thanks for being here.
Dorie, thank you. This was lovely.
Take care and see you next week, everyone.